Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them. On the 20th of November 2003, James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon was elected councillor for the Failsworth East Ward of Oldham. Deeply ambitious, he ruthlessly rose to power, and by 2011, he was already leader of the council. In 2015, exploiting a Labour Party loophole, he became MP for Oldham West and Royton. If only the people of the town knew then what they now know. Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.
A very, very good evening, Monday the 31st of March 2025. My name is Raja Mir. This is one of those Recusant 9 broadcasts where we will just focus on one issue. It's kind of like a workshop. Every now and then we have, and I'm just need to get dressed a bit. I had a snooze, actually. Good evening to the late comers. And Joanna, of course. Okay, so first things first, of course, please do like, please do share, do subscribe to the channel. It's completely free. And if you can, and if you're one of the 169 of us already who are with me this evening, especially for those of you who haven't yet, please do consider taking out a subscription to Redwall and the Ravel. It's completely free, but I am just 14 subscribers away from hitting 200 for the month, and I'd very, very much like to hit 200 for the month, which would get me 2/3 of the way to the paid subscribers I lost after I went free to air for everything. So once I removed the paywall, I lost 300 subscribers. 200 people have come forward, or just under, with 14 under. So if you can, please, if you're with me and you're new or you're yet to just commit the £3 a month or the £30 for the full year, this is how I earn my living, and this is how, this is what's got us this far. And the rape gang inquiry, Rupert Lowe's rape gang inquiry, not for one moment am I an arrogant man, but I challenge you to go away and come back and say, we are where we are. Would we be where we are if I had not done what I'd done for the last 6 years? This agenda was dead. It was dead and buried. It was a Tommy Robinson screaming and shouting. They had effectively sidelined him. I have no opinion to share on Tommy Robinson. I'm just sharing with you that they'd effectively sidelined him, and they'd moved on. The survivors, just every now and then, maybe on the news, and whenever a story came out, it was managed and it went away. It is because of me and my ever-increasing grey hair and wrinkles as I look at myself on the camera, and a small team of us who stood by me, that resulted in getting it this far. And what a journey it has been, not just for us, but I think for the entire country. What a journey it's been, because people across the country are genuinely outraged now that there is no avoiding what took place. Now that there is no avoiding what took place, people are genuinely outraged, and everyone can see it's a cover-up. It's nothing short of a cover-up. The people in power, and it includes the Conservatives who were in power for 14 years, and I think the Conservatives just decided it wasn't worth the hassle. These girls didn't matter. They were working class. I don't think it's any more complicated than that. But with the Labour Party, it's far more sinister. Far, far more sinister. And we now know. This was a cover-up, and the cover-up was to do not with maintaining community relations, not because people were scared of being accused of being racist. The cover-up effectively was to do with exchanging little white girls for votes. And here we are. In the end, the truth is the truth. So that's where we're up to. So If you find value, please, I'm looking at my screen, hoping we can get somewhere to the 14 more we need. Maybe we will, maybe we won't, who knows. But if you find value, do subscribe, and let's get on with this evening's transmission. I think the starting point has got to be he says. Why is that not working? Oh, that's not working because I've not plugged something in. And that will up. Yeah. The starting point has got to be this petition. That not petition, this crowdfunder, this fundraiser that he Rupert Lowe's put up, and it's at £407,000. So his target apparently is £500,000. I'm not sure it'll stop at £500,000 if I'm honest with you. I'd imagine it'll continue all the way up to trying to achieve £1 million. Yeah, and the thing is, John, none of these people were saying it until we were saying it, and then until we'd evidenced it, and until I'd been dragged into police cell after police cell, courtroom after courtroom, and still refused to plead guilty. So that's where we're up to, and that's how we've got here. So it's at £407,000. So let me do my thing. I've written something, and I will talk you through it. I've got a workshop sort of prepared for you. So he's called it, Rupert Lowe's called it, and he's rightly called it, the People's Inquiry. And it's essentially a non-statutory investigation into the grooming gangs, into the rape gangs. And let's give you some context, because when I first spoke to him, thank you so much for the super chat. So thank you. Please do consider a super chat. Please do consider buying me a coffee or subscribing. Nothing's coming. So really, you're the first £2 to have come in. So thank you very, very much. So when he first spoke to me, he was genuinely shocked, because I don't think he believed the scale of what had taken place, or that it could have been allowed to take place. And it's like so many people who come new to this, they just don't believe it. They just don't believe it. And what's essentially been taking place, conveyed to him and others did, is that for decades, and we reckon 40 years at least, in terms of organised like this with the relationships that existed, for decades, 40 years, numerous British towns, a lot of them across the northwest, but not all, towns and cities have been affected by organised rape gang networks. And the term they gave them was grooming gangs, because they would groom these young women, is one of the tactics they would use. So they would befriend them. So they'd pick on the vulnerable. At the beginning, it evolved into something far more. And these groups have targeted these vulnerable young people, predominantly girls, and almost exclusively, in my opinion, the girls, subjecting them to systemic abuse whilst the authorities repeatedly failed to intervene effectively. And when the investigations came, every one of them was forced. No local authority said, oh, we've got a problem here, we need to do an investigation. Every council, every police force tried to cover it up. And it was usually campaigners or newspaper journalists, few and far between, who forced this into the public sphere, which is why I have time for Charlie Peters, as young as he is. Thank you so much, Faye. Which is why I have time for Charlie Peters. And the investigations in Rotherham, Telford, Rochdale, Oldham, Manchester, and other locations revealed thousands of victims and patterns of institutional failure across police forces, social services, local government, and politicians. Systemic gang rape of children across the United Kingdom for 40 years. And I see some of you are mentioning Liz Truss. She also makes reference to the number 100,000. I live in a town where the population is 250,000. It's like every child in this town was gang raped. So, it's been bubbling away, and they've got away with it. From the groomers to the gang rapists to the traffickers to the customers to those involved. And of course, there was even a newspaper article very recently. Every now and then it rears its head and then disappears again. I've been following it, of police officers involved in Rotherham. And the anecdotal stories I've heard is that there were police officers involved who would either, or a combination of, get backhanders from the gangs, because these were effectively drug gangs as well, or they would blackmail the children and also have dibs with the children. So hopefully all of that gets looked at, if not now, soon. This is too late to go away, by the way. And despite multiple investigations and reports, many victims and advocates, the full truth has been suppressed. It's clear. And we caught Andy Burnham neck deep in the cover-up, where he's now forced to backtrack and say his assurance review was limited. And they're all like that. All the investigations were suppressed, and real accountability, what does that even mean? We'll go into that, but it remains elusive. And it is against this backdrop that Rupert Lowe has launched his initiative. We exposed the cover-up. We exposed the complicity of the government with the Home Office letter coming out on New Year's Day. And we forced into Parliament a vote where the world looked on in shock as our Parliament voted against an inquiry into the cover-up of the gang rape of children. Reform, the Conservatives grandstanded. And in the end, I think it was timely as well, because it gave Rupert Lowe a way out from the civil war he was having with his former Reform colleagues. I don't think anyone can say it was benefiting any of us. And so that's what took place. And he comes along. Now, I know some of you have come across Rupert Lowe, but I think, a very brief summary. Before he was MP, he was also a member of the European Parliament, I think, for the West Midlands. And before his political career, he was chairman of a Southampton football club. And his experience is business and finance. And if you follow him on X, you'll see he's very outspoken about establishment failures and has positioned himself as an independent voice, willing to challenge institutional narratives. He'll say the things that we're all thinking, but many of us dare not say, and he'll just say them. And his decision to launch the inquiry stems from his belief that official channels have consistently failed to deliver justice and transparency on this issue. So that's where we're at. So I think it was on Friday, he launches this inquiry. He puts a post up on X, and he launches a crowdfunder to fund an inquiry. And he's clear on the purpose of the inquiry. He sets it out in his post and so people need to understand right from the beginning, he's clear on the purpose. This isn't a statutory inquiry. He doesn't have powers. He recognises all of that. The purpose of the inquiry is to uncover the full extent of the scandal give a platform to victims and whistleblowers, and expose the institutions and individuals responsible for decades of inaction. We will not get justice through this inquiry. And those of you who believe will get justice through this inquiry are mistaken, and you'll be disappointed. But this inquiry, as I see it, is a vital step towards the justice that will come, because it will unveil so much through what is said and what is avoided to be said. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think he works like that. And I wouldn't ask. I am proud, Paul, that I'm 100% community funded. It gives me the independence to speak out as I see fit. So I've got this far, and I think, we're okay. So in his own words, this inquiry aims to, let me just read it, get to the truth that the establishment refuses to acknowledge. Yeah. And he hopes to bring justice to those who have been failed by bypassing government restrictions and institutional gatekeeping. Lowe hopes to provide a truly independent assessment free from political interference. Well, on the basis that I come from Oldham and Cyril Smith came from Rochdale, the neighbouring town, and I'm very, very familiar with what Cyril Smith said and did, I find that statement, well, unquantifiable, really, Steve. So, off you go. I've sent him on his way. I don't think his real name is Steve, and I think there's a lot of people here, not here in this space, but in the environment around the political space, that have bought into, we're in the reform camp and there's a Lowe camp, and we all hate each other. And I've been at this for 6 years now, Jimmy. Yes, I do know how to block someone. Okay, thank you. It's not the first. It won't be the last. Thank you, Rose. Well, Rose, at some point, you and I might sit down and have a chat, and we will make sure we get your testimony directed towards the inquiry that comes. So, at the core of the inquiry, he wants to do three things, and let me do this way so I can make sense whilst I'm talking to you. One, what happened? And he wants to document the scale of the abuse and the experience of the victims. So that's what the what is. And this is me analysing it. He might come up with something else, but this is me looking at it and thinking, okay, what's going on here? And me sharing my analysis. So what they want to do is document the scale of the abuse and the experiences, the testimonies of the victims. Second thing he's after is, how did it happen? And I'm just suddenly very, very aware of my handwriting, and my friend Gary's wife tutting away, so I'm going to be try and make it clearer for you. So how did it happen is what they want to do, I think, is investigate the systemic failures that enabled the crimes to persist. Systemic failures, yeah. And 3, why was it allowed to happen? And I think this really is about exposing institutional complicity, political inaction as to why the inaction took place, and of course the why is also to do with the wider cultural environment, our belief systems, multiculturalism and all of that sort of stuff. And I also believe that in the how did it happen, we have to also look at the belief systems in the perpetrator community. So that is the 3 areas that he is looking on. Tutting now. See, I knew it. I perhaps need to get a new nib for my tablet. So those are the 3 fundamental questions. These are the 3 fundamental questions that he hopes the inquiry will look at. Let me clear my... And the way he goes about it, he's got a structure to his inquiry. So he's got 3 parts. One, he wants to launch the inquiry and collect evidence. So he wants to begin with a public call for witness, written evidence. So it's a public call for written evidence. Victims, survivors, whistleblowers and professionals are going to be invited to submit the testimonies through a secure process with clear deadlines to ensure a structured investigation. So remember the 3 things he wants to focus on? One is what happened. So you're going to have first-hand testimonies from victims and whistleblowers. How did it happen? You're going to have submissions from professionals, who will provide insight into the institutional failure and the why it was allowed to happen. You're going to analyze patterns in testimonies which will reveal how, not why, how the authorities ignored, failed, or covered up. And those are three different things. The survivors, the victims. Okay, so that's going to be part one. Now, what part one does, and people say, give me 1 second. I don't think it works like that. I don't think you'll get to meet him like that, I'm afraid, Rose. I think what will happen is once the inquiry is launched, then they will put out a call for evidence and all the rest of it. So you've waited this long. I think you're going to have to, you and many others, we're just going to have to wait a little bit longer, I think. Oh, wow. Thanks, Colin. And I'm really, really grateful for that. That's amazing. So the launching of the evidence, the launch and the evidence collection, is actually the first time in this country you will have a call made out to say, okay, survivors from across the country, there'll be a process. Whistleblowers, professionals who worked in the sector, submit evidence. It's never happened. It's never happened, and you'll be able to map it and work out where it's gone on and all of that. And I don't know how it's going to happen, but there are some risks. One of the risks, of course, is low participation. Victims and whistleblowers may fear retaliation. I don't blame them. Look what they've done to me. Or they'll doubt the effectiveness of the inquiry. Go and have a look on the mainstream news. This man's nearly raised £500,000. He's an MP. Where is the stories on the mainstream news? Where's the positivity? There's none of that, is there? Oh, sorry, you want to meet up with me? You can meet up with me. I was in Oldham earlier today. I put something out yesterday. And I had a cup of coffee with my friend Mohib and Dorothy, who's on here sometimes. She came along and had a cup of tea with us. So I was in Oldham earlier. So I don't know when I'll next be in Oldham, but I think what day is tomorrow? I suppose I could go in tomorrow at some point. And my email is I'll just type it in. Just give me 1 second, people. If you send something on that, it'll get to me. So there are some risks, and these people will be hoping it collapses right at the beginning, because I put myself in the position of the Home Office, in the position of the left-wing sort of mainstream media, in the position of the rape gang affiliated politicians, and this is what I'd do. I'd try and scupper it right at the beginning. Low participation. Victims and whistleblowers fearing retaliation or doubting the effectiveness of the inquiry. It fails straight away. It'll lead to a lack of submissions. And there's ways in which they need to mitigate this. I'm sure his team have come up with that, but I would want to, create a portal, a digital portal with strict confidentiality and additional support for those coming forward. So that's what I would do. Then you've also got false or misleading testimony. And without legal accountability, there is a risk that fabricated or politically motivated submissions will outweigh what's taking place. And you then think, okay, once you've submitted the evidence, there needs to be another layer of work taking place, not just around vetting those who are submitting the evidence, but testing the evidence, corroborating what is coming forward. There must be a process, a second filtering process put in place. Again, I'm just sharing. I looked at this and I thought, okay, if it was me, what would I do? If I was involved in this project, and I've been involved in, national think tanks. I've been involved in think tanks. I've been involved in government task forces in the past. So I have an understanding of what I think I would do. So there's mitigating that risk. And of course, there's security concerns, digital threats, hacking, attempts to undermine the evidence collected. And the inquiry has to invest in cybersecurity measures. So that's exactly where I'd be going. And that's exactly where I'd be going. I'd be going to Elon Musk to set up something through which this evidence can be collated. And then how do you get the victims and the whistleblowers to come forward? A whole host of videos, roadshows. Do you go and talk in places? You've got to, not everyone does digital, and not everyone does digital well. There was I don't know how strong he was, mate, but there was a Christian leader on the news yesterday, and that absolutely disgusted me. He was the former Archbishop of Canterbury, who admitted to covering up the abuse of little boys by priests. Apparently found it overwhelming, but he forgave those who committed the abuse. Yeah, you can see. There was that girl, wasn't there? She called Ellie. And one fake victim comes forward and something happens, and it'll all unravel, won't it? Because they'll jump on that, won't they, mate? These people will just jump on that. And when I said these people, those who are looking to undermine it will just jump on that. Okay, so that's the launch and the evidence gathering, the initial stage. Yeah, launch and evidence collection. The second stage he makes reference to are public hearings. I love a good public hearing, do I? Let me write this down. Public hearings. So this, I think, from what I can make out, will be live streamed. So a series of live streamed hearings will allow for public scrutiny while maintaining witness safety. Testimonies will be given behind closed doors but broadcast online to ensure transparency. Witnesses will have the option to remain anonymous or provide statements in written or video form. So who do we know that can help with this? Straight away. That's where I'm going straight away. Do you see how in the first stage you go to Elon Musk and X To partner, there's got to be some heavyweight partners. Now you go to a news agency. And what will the public hearings do against those three aims? You see, I'm systematic. I'll go back to those three overarching questions. What happened? How did it happen? Why was it allowed to happen? Yeah. So victims will provide live testimony, making their experiences harder to ignore. So after we've vetted through that first layer, is the public hearings, and victims will provide live testimony. Never happened in the United Kingdom in this setting. How did it happen? So you will hear from professionals and whistleblowers who will highlight the failings of the police, the councils, the politicians, other institutions. And the why? The public questioning of officials experts, politicians, will reveal the deeper political and cultural factors behind this. So all of this, you have got people who are willing to participate. Those of you saying, oh, we don't have a right to call witnesses, we can't force testimony. This isn't designed that way. And maybe Rupert Lowe and his team haven't worked this out yet. And if you go back to what I said right at the beginning on my position, delivered strategically, this is powerful. We're not here at this point to get people who we know aren't going to. We want to give a platform for those who will and have always wanted to. So, the MP, Lucy Allen, remember, made reference to how she was threatened by police officers. She might be a politician. Simon Danchuk, the former Rochdale MP, who was told to keep his mouth shut. There's a whole host of them who will come forward. There are plenty of public officials, I know police officers, who had their hands tied behind their back. Council officers, school staff, social workers. And then there are a whole tier of experts who've analysed this, who've made sense of this. And that's actually where the likes of Billy from Page UK come in. Not to sit on the panel. And it's no disrespect to Billy, because the panel is something strategic and complicated and process driven. Where people's expertise are is where you put them. Always. Don't try and make people fit in an area where they don't excel in areas like this. And that's exactly it. The voices that have been suppressed can now speak. So we've gone through the filtering and the public hearings. Hearing after hearing after hearing. And the hearings should be thematic. So as well as what, why and how, Remember when we started to look at the themes in the first stage? They should also be thematic. And these hearings will go out across the world. Yeah, I've come across her from Israel. I look forward to meeting her. I have a long-standing promise with an old friend of mine. Now, well, I'm much older now, but I have a long-standing promise with an old friend of mine that would get wasted in Tel Aviv. She's Israeli, so maybe that will happen. Maybe that will happen. But with the public hearings, there are, again, some key risks. Non-attendance of key witnesses. Individuals with crucial information may refuse to testify, weakening the inquiry's impact. The risk, of course, can be mitigated by publicly documented refusals and questioning institutions in their absence, but my viewpoint is not to use this as an opportunity to attack those we know aren't coming or won't testify. My viewpoint is to create a platform for those who have had their voices suppressed, as Ryan rightly said. I'm with you. I genuinely believe that we the people can and will make a difference. Of course, there's the re-traumatizing of victims. Survivors reliving experiences could suffer further distress. And there's got to be professional support services attached to this. Who would I bring in? Well, for me, straight away, that's the role of the Maggie Oliver Foundation. They've got to be the official partner to provide that service. There might be others who underneath them work. You know, something like, but that's the role of the Maggie Oliver Foundation for me. Sadly, there will be security threats. You know Antifa will rock up. You'll know Nick and his team from UKIP will turn up. We need to stop all of that. We need to operate at a high professional level and not become what they want it to become, which is this violent confrontation. You know, where all of the distractions become the news rather than what's taking place inside the space. This isn't a place for a Tommy Robinson rally any more than anything else. Tell me if I'm wrong. And then we've got to fight the media distortion because they will attack us. See, I'm already talking in the language of us. They will attack us. We've got to have a press team. GB News have got to be partners in this. Key journalists who've written about this have got to be partners in this. The mainstream media will selectively report on the hearings. They'll twist testimonies to fit predetermined narratives. And the inquiry must control its messaging. So it's not just the full unedited broadcasts, but it's the briefings, doubling down, the workshop afterwards, all of that. All of that needs to happen. I've already said to you at the beginning, Andrew, if you were listening, and sorry if I'm being harsh. If you're looking for justice from this, then you're looking in the wrong place. This is a step, a vital step, in my viewpoint. Then we have stage 3. Remember, he's got 3 stages. And that's the report and publication. So the inquiry will culminate in a detailed report and the purpose of that report should be an undeniable record of what has taken place. That report will test and validate or dismiss all of the theories out there. So the guy Connor, I follow him. I don't agree with him, but I follow him on X, Lotus Eaters. He talks about, the reason why the grooming gangs exist is because of Islam. Let's test it. Let's see if the witnesses, the victims, the survivors come forward with that. Let's see if those who worked in the perpetrator communities come forward with that. Test my belief. Children were exchanged for votes. Test the one to do it. It was to maintain community relations. Was community relations maintained as a consequence of selling little girls for votes? And so on, yeah? So you can test that. And Rupert Lowe himself has emphasised that this report will serve as an undeniable record of what has transpired, one that cannot be easily dismissed by politicians and the media, by placing the truth in the hands of the public. So this is what it does. Never before. Sorry, I've done something with my pen. Placing the truth in the hands of the public. We will create a document so compelling that the authorities will be forced to respond. Do you see? Now, of course, I'm joining the dots, and maybe some of Rupert's team are listening in and finding value in this. Take it. My work is completely free. Take it. I want you to take it. But again, we look at those 3 elements. What? How? Why? So we have a final report which will compiles and analyzes the full scope of testimonies and evidence. You know you need here? You need one of those university departments. You need Matt Goodwin. who was a professor, is a professor. You need the likes of Jordan Peterson. That's who you need here, helping you and assisting you with that. The how, it will detail specific failures in law, in the police, in the councils, in the political field, all of that. It will detail the specific failures. And the report, the why, what we mean by the why is it will expose the ideological, political, and institutional reasons for the greatest betrayal in modern history. Sorry, there's one more. Cultural, ideological, political, cultural, and institutional reasons. Raja, what about the risks here? See, systematic, methodical. I had a snooze earlier. Now I understand why I had a snooze earlier. I did last night's transmission. I loaded up the video for editing, went to bed, started this, and I fell asleep and woke up at 4:30 in the morning and I started this. There are some risks here. The government bodies will dismiss or ignore the report. That's when we need reform. That's when we need the Conservatives. I'm sorry. We're all in this together, and some issues are bigger than any one of us and all of us. So that will stop that. There'll be legal threats. And that's where we need Toby Young and his free speech union and the lawyers attached to them. Those implicated in the findings may attempt to sue or discredit. No, what they'll do is they'll try and prevent the report from being published. I've seen this myself in the past. How local authorities have launched lawfare and all the rest of it. And of course, public fatigue and indifference. If the findings fail to shock or add new insights, they may not generate momentum, and the inquiries will just... It was the ICSA report. Why do you think none of the recommendations were implemented in the way? Because it didn't have the weight. They couldn't take... It was a cold report. It needs to be emotive. It needs to be, presented, written, compiled with heart and soul. So there you have it. There's more. I'll get on with it. Let me just have a little drink. Are you finding this valuable? Sorry, there's over 200 of you, 920 of you at various points. If you're finding this valuable, let me know and I'll continue. And if you are finding this valuable, perhaps one or two of you might want to buy me a coffee. Or better still, get me over the line of 200 subscribers. I'm just going to go and get a biscuit. Good. I'm glad you're finding it useful. I'll play the song in the background. I'll go and get myself a biscuit and I will continue. Okay? But please, if you can, subscribe. Please, if you can, subscribe to redwallandtherabble.co.uk. I was 14 short when I started. And I'm 14 short still now. So, not a single subscription.
agenda, and it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Do you wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah? Do you think we ever wanna defend, yeah? 'Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get sugar-coated, overloaded, postal-folded, bare-faced. That's right, yeah, we got an agenda, and it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Do you wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah? Do you think we ever wanna defend, yeah? 'Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get sugar-coated, overloaded, postal-folded, bare-faced lies.
Bare-faced lies.
Can't wait, you always told us you'd build us all a new Jerusalem, yeah. You talk the talk, but when you walk, you only leave a crooked line there. And you don't see the trouble that's brewing if all you do is just what you're doing. That's right, yeah, we got an agenda, and it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Do you wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah? Do you think we ever wanna defend, yeah? 'Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get sugar-coated, overloaded, postal-folded, bare-faced lies. Is this where you wanna be? Debts and childhood poverty. Oh, somebody set us free from this corrupt kleptocracy. Oh yeah.
Bare-faced lies.
That's right, yeah, we got an agenda, and it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Do you wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah? Do you think we ever wanna defend, yeah? 'Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get sugar-coated, overloaded, postal-folded, bare-faced. That's right, yeah, we got an agenda, and it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Do you wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah? Do you think we ever wanna defend, yeah? 'Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get sugar-coated, overloaded, postal-folded, bare-faced. That's right, yeah, we got an agenda, and it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Do you wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah? Do you think we ever wanna defend, yeah? 'Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get sugar-coated, overloaded, postal-folded, bare-faced. That's right, yeah, we got an agenda, and it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Do you wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah? Do you think we ever wanna defend, yeah? 'Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get sugar-coated, overloaded, postal-folded, bare-faced.
Thank you to the couple of you who took the break to buy me a coffee. I'm grateful to you. We know with the subscribers though, so that's a shame for me. I came today hoping we'd just get there. We'll get to the 200 and then I'll get the 100 in April, and I'm back to where I was. Listen, all of this, forget it. Just focus on what the inquiry hopes to achieve. Because you get yourselves in a mess, because you get yourself too far forward. Civil prosecutions, this, that, something else. No. The purpose of the inquiry isn't that. We should focus on this. We want to produce an undeniable record of what has transpired. One that cannot be dismissed by politicians or the media. And to place the truth in the hands of the public. That is the focus. That has to be the focus. Because then it springboards. It springboards. Thank you so much, mate. Thank you. Because then, you know and I know, two political parties will have to integrate this into the manifestos for the next general election. I've said to you all along, those of you who've come on this journey with me after Christmas in January, I've said to you all along, do not get ahead of yourselves. Do not get diverted or deflected by, I won't call them idiots because it's unfair. But by those with a vested interest in something else, Magna Carta this, something else that, it's not going to get you anywhere. We've got to work through the system that exists. And the system that exists is political. It's the ballot box. All the time I've said the same to all of you. And that's what's got us here, because we've been taking politicians out at the ballot box and we've been exposing politicians. So please remain focused. I'm trying my best. I am trying my best not to be negative towards any of you, because I accept, I appreciate. Many of you are newer on this journey. So you have two political parties at the end of this who will have to have it in their manifestos of a public inquiry. They'll have to have legislation in there. If you have been in any way involved, we will prosecute you. MPs will lose their job, be put in prison, all of that. If we remain focused, that's where we're going with this. If we allow ourselves to be hijacked with other issues, other causes, then we're lost. And indeed, Mohan, sorry, I'm watching it, the Sikh Awareness Society, and you know, there are. I hope to one day meet him. I hope to one day meet him. Thank you, Robert. When someone gives me something like £20, I'm like, wow. For me, it's an obscene amount of money. Thank you. Thank you. That is right. The subscriptions I'm asking for is to Redwall and the Rabble. It's pinned at the top. It's the website where I share all the evidence of these videos, get condensed as reports. What I'm sharing with you now, the presentation, I'll put that up there. Again, all of my work is free. Take it, use it. And I feel better. If I'm honest with you, something inside me, I feel better since we removed all the paywalls. Nothing to do with losing money or anything. I just feel better because we're growing a community. And this work that I do needs to be out there so you understand it properly. So what does the inquiry hope to achieve? We're all clear, aren't we? It is not about documenting past failures. It is about forcing accountability and action. And the key objectives. So I'm trying to do a few things at once. I'll get to that. I think it's an important question, Richard. I'll get to that. The key objectives. One is you've got to give victims a voice by providing a platform to share their experience and expose the extent of the abuse. That exercise has never happened in this country. You've got to hold institutions to account by identifying those who failed in their duty and pushing for public acknowledgement of their negligence. The inquiry hopes to achieve, it should provide undeniable evidence that cannot be dismissed by politicians, ensuring that the truth is exposed to the public. And it has to, it must do. And remember, I'm 6 years in, and this will take another 4 years, by the way, before we get to anywhere where we need to be. It's got to drive political change by using the findings to demand legislative and institutional reforms, pressuring authorities to take real action against those responsible and implement safeguards to prevent future failures and put people in prison. That's where we want to eventually go with this, don't we? And when we talk about political change, let's be clear. We also, we're having these conversations. Deport. Well, let's force it in the law. We're having these conversations about the communities where these people come from. I shared a piece on Pakistan yesterday from The Spectator. I read it word for word so I wouldn't be accused of being a racist. There are deep-rooted prejudices in some of our communities that need to be addressed. And if they're not willing to change, and we can't take them on that journey to be changed, then the question has to be asked. What role do they have in our society? So what can't the inquiry do? I think it's also important what it cannot do. And if I was Rupert Lowe, by now I'd have a web page. I'd have a web page, called it the rapeganginquiry.com or the peoplesinquiry.com. By now I'd have a web page with an FAQ and all of that and making announcements on it. Sorry, Rupert. You're older than I am, and I struggle with this technology, but you've got a team. By now I'd have a web page. With an FAQ. The inquiry cannot compel witnesses to testify, and unlike a statutory inquiry, it has no legal power to force individuals or institutions to participate. So why would you go and bang your head against a wall? You wouldn't. You get the people who want to participate to participate. It cannot prosecute offenders. The inquiry is not a judicial body and cannot bring criminal charges. Doesn't matter. The evidence will demonstrate who the criminals are. It cannot access classified government documents. It can't access any of the council archives. Doesn't have to. We bypass that by going straight to the survivors, the whistleblowers, the professionals who failed, who tried and failed, were held back. And that will then force in the public inquiry that subsequently comes the gathering of that more detailed evidence, the forcing of people to testify. Andy Burnham will be forced onto the stand. Angela Rayner will be forced onto the stand. Jim McMahon will be forced onto the stand, and if I have my way, he'll then be marched to prison. But right now it can't access classified documents, government documents, and without statutory authority, it is reliant on publicly available evidence and voluntary testimony. And it cannot enforce policy changes. but it can exert political pressure. And what should happen is the findings of this inquiry. If I was to time frame it, it has to come out and be completed well in advance of the next general election, so it informs and shapes the manifestos of the political parties who genuinely are supportive of this. And again, I am apolitical in this because I believe we've got to put pressure on the Conservatives. I believe we've got to put pressure on Reform, and indeed, UKIP, maybe Labour, will even change because they'll have to. Look at them now talking about, migrants and immigrants and all of that sort of stuff. This is not their language. They've been forced into this place. So this is me. I'm not on the inquiry panel. Well, I've not been asked as of yet. If I am, great. If I'm not, it doesn't matter. I will continue to support and educate the people who believe in me, who valued what I bring, and support me to continue. It's a fair point. It's a fair point. I don't think anyone should be excluded from giving testimony. Or they follow my work. You'll find that a lot of people follow my work. Quietly, discreetly, they follow my work. And this is my sadness and my disappointment, Gary, is that despite me doing so much for my own hometown, in the end, I was used and abused and discarded by so many. And why? As I told my friend Faye earlier in the year, I'm not here to play games. For me, this isn't a game. I am as clear what I am, how I present myself is exactly what I am. I'm a northern working class bloke who owes everything to this country and its people, and I will fight to protect and defend those I consider to be my own, whether they feel the same way or not about me. I was 20 years into this before I came across this. I'm 6 years into this. I know there's another 4 years at least before we get to a place of a public inquiry, and I feel hope at what Rupert Lowe has done. And I plead to my friends in the Conservatives and in Reform and UKIP to support this inquiry, strengthen it. And it has weaknesses. I've identified weaknesses myself whilst I'm talking with you. But our job, when someone comes along to do some good, is to find the goodness in ourselves and hold them up so they can do better. So that's me. Thank you to and I'm just going to tell you before I finish, thank you to the two paid supporters. Three paid supporters. Thank you to the three people who joined me this evening and signed up. What do I say? What do I say? Let's have a look at the running total. It's at 408,000, and I've got. Oh, there's one person's paid £5 a year, 8. And I've got £12 in subscriptions. Brilliant. Thank you very, very much. I'm coming back tomorrow for an Oldham specific broadcast. It's in the evening, so I'm coming back tomorrow evening for an Oldham specific broadcast. But if you're from elsewhere, listen in and watch, and you'll see what I've done here and how I've run rings around some of these people. My name is Raja Mir. A very, very good evening.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them. On the 20th of November 2003, James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon was elected councillor for the Failsworth East Ward of Oldham. Deeply ambitious, he ruthlessly rose to power, and by 2011, he was already leader of the council. In 2015, exploiting a Labour Party loophole, he became MP for Oldham West and Royton. If only the people of the town knew then what they now know. Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.